Hey everybody, welcome back to the face-to-face people. If you're not face-to-face, if you're in quarantine or just a virtual, hello. Don't want to exclude you. This week for English 4, we're going to be focusing on resumes. We're going to be talking about resumes. Now, I know some of you have already created resumes, and I'm not going to lie. For a lot of entry-level jobs, you're not going to need a resume. Most of the time, you'll just need an application. But if you ever want to climb up in that position, unless you are kind of like an entrepreneur and own your own business, you're going to need to eventually have a resume if you want to climb up higher in your career path. So at the beginning, no, you might not. You're probably not going to need a resume for some of these jobs that most of you are going to be applying for. But if you want to move up, then eventually you'll probably need a resume. So this is just something that you need to keep in your back pocket and know how to do going forward. Because I can't tell you how many people, friends of mine, that come to me and be like, I don't know how to make a resume, and I just walk them through what I'm about to make y'all do this week. It's sped up a little bit. I don't make them read what you're about to read, and I don't make them fill out an application. But for what we're going to be doing probably Thursday, that's what I walk them through. So let's talk about resumes. The school Wi-Fi is down. Yay. So I can't screen share with you this, but attached to the assignment in the video is this thing that I am about to walk you through. It's called Creating an Effective Resume. It's the file that is Creating an Effective Resume. So what is a resume? Resume is a one-page summary of your skills, education, and experience. The resume acts much like an advertisement for a company trying to sell something. Your resume is your advertisement. Just as sneaker companies spend countless hours and millions of dollars designing their latest advertising campaign, you too must spend a good deal of time creating and proofreading, editing, and perfecting your resume. Resume is one of the most important pieces of writing you'll ever create. A solid resume is the key to opening the door for good jobs. Don't cheat yourself. Work hard on it. So, the next question is, how long do employers typically look at a resume? And they give you three options. You have A, less than 30 seconds, B, 3 minutes, or C, 1 minute. And the answer is actually A. They don't spend more. Your resume isn't supposed to be super crazy long. It is not supposed to be super short either. A resume needs to be exactly 1 page. That's how long a resume needs to be. It's an advertisement. You're putting yourself out there. It is the thing that will get you the interview. The interview will then get you the job. The resume is kind of like the bait you throw out there to hopefully get the job. And sometimes just nitpicky things on a resume can be the thing that elevate you to the people that get the interview and the people that don't get an interview. In fact, I always heard a rumor in college, people would send out, teachers would send out resumes to schools being like, hire me. And based on what school you went to, that determined which, they would put those resumes in a pile, and those would be the people that they interviewed. That's what I've always heard. So a resume is just kind of like your foot in the door, and so you just need to kind of make it look nice as possible. If you answered A, you're correct. Employers often receive hundreds of resumes for a single position. They do not have time to pour over each and every word on each one. This increases the importance on the smallest details. So here are some of the things that your resume should include. Now, keep in mind, not all resumes are the same, but there are some common elements that they should include. The necessary elements are a heading. Your heading should include personal information. Your formal name, not your nickname, should appear at the top, and it should stand out above all else on the paper. You want them to remember who you are in less than 30 seconds. You also need to include your address, both a permanent and temporary, and phone number. If you use email, include your email address. You kind of at this point in time, they expect you to have an email address. So let's talk about the addresses. So most of you, if you are transitory, if you get into a job that's transitory, your temporary address is whatever address you'd be in that city, and your permanent address would be your home residence. For those of you who are going to college, your temporary address is the address you have at college. Your permanent address is your parents' house here at Portageville. So that's just a key thing to keep in mind. Phone number, yes, you need to include your cell number in order for them to get a hold of you. And then last but not least, email. At this point in time, people expect you to have email. And so you do need to have an email address. You do need to make sure it's a proper email address. It doesn't need to be partydude69 at yellowswag.org or anything like that. It needs to be kind of your first. They expect it to be like the combinations that people look for are like first initial, last name. That's usually fairly common, so you can do first name, last name. I do first name, middle initial, last name in order to have mine for my personal email. So that's just things to keep in mind. And it does not need to be your school email. As soon as you graduate from here, we're within 6 months, we're chopping that off. We're killing your school email. So you need to have your own personal email outside of academia. Next one is the objective. This one is not necessarily as important for those of you who are looking for things to help pad the resume. The career objective is something you might need. But if you have too much, career objective can be an easy thing to axe. So employers often say that the most important part of this is the most important part of a resume. It generally is a one-sentence explanation of the type of job you're seeking. Your objective should be fairly specific. If you're applying for different job types, change your objective to match each job type. If you're uncertain about the specific positions available, note your areas of interest. Then you need to have education. All of you are high school students. You do need to put your high school education. You only need to put your until you start paying for like those things that are above my shoulder. You need to only put your top level of education. So up until this past summer, I don't put Porterville High School class of 2006 on mine. No, I put Southeast Missouri State University 2011 and the degree I got. Now, since I paid for that. And I paid for that one above, that's my master's degree. So once you start paying for college, you start including all of the degrees that you acquire. This would also apply to trade schools. Once you get your trade school certificate, or once you get your certification, I don't really know what you get through trade school. They had to give you something in order to say you've completed this curriculum, you've completed this training type of thing. Then, once you've completed trade school, you'd only put trade school. You wouldn't put the high school. So, education. As students, this should be your next section of information. If you're in college, only include college because it seems that you've already graduated from high school. For the same reason, high school students should not include any information from junior high, middle school. You should use specific dates of attendance and graduation and expected graduation. As a college student, include your major, degree you expect to receive. Some people include education-related honors in this section, and your education is particularly relevant to this job. You might want to include a section called relevant courses. This category can list the classes that contributed to your employability. So if you do go to a trade school, list some of the very specific classes that would help you with that. That doesn't just apply to trade school. Like if you are going into graphic design, talk about different graphic design classes that you've taken in that particular section. Later on, we're going to talk about two types of resumes. There's a chronological and a functional. Most of the time, if you're using a functional resume, the education would all of a sudden drop closer to the bottom. You still need to include it, but it would be more towards the bottom. But jobs that require certain education, you might want to rise those farther to the top. Next one is experience, also called work experience or employment experience. In this section, you should include previous employers, their locations, your dates of employment, your job title. You may have to create a job title if you didn't have one. You should include at least two one-line descriptions of what your job duties and responsibilities were. You can not assume that the title explains what you did to all the readers. Use action verbs to start each of these descriptions. Do not use I in any of your descriptions. So basically you're chopping off I and just starting with the verb and explaining it from there. For work experience, sometimes you're going to have to twist it a little bit. I know at this point, a lot of you don't have a whole lot of experience. Some of you do. Some of you have a lot of experience. Bravo to you. But for those of you who don't have a lot of experience, then you're probably going to need to kind of stretch it a little bit. We'll have some examples of students at resumes where they kind of put a creative spin on some of the things that they have done to help booster up and help bolster their particular experience. Activities. Employers like to see people who have been involved in school and community activities. In this section, list special activities you participated, prom committee, organizations you joined, drama club, baseball team, etc. Include years that you participated. Be aware, however, some employers might eventually view this information as irrelevant. As high school students, this should not be a concern. So yes, at this level, if you need padding, you can include the activities. But as you get older, activities might need to be nixed. I don't include any activities on mine. I just have education and employment history on mine. But I also am 32 years old, so I have a lot more experience than all of you. So y'all don't have that experience. Activities can be a thing that also would boost it. A summary of skills. Some people use this section to include special skills or talents not included elsewhere in the resume, but would be relevant to the employer. Some possibilities are how fast you can type, you're fluent in French. And then last but not least is references. Now, a common practice is to put references available upon request at the bottom of the resume. Most career advisors would say this is not necessary. However, if you are needing padding, it's saying that you should have a list off to the side here. But if you need padding, include references at the very bottom. If you need to get to that entire page length, references at the very bottom would help fill out that page. If you have already gotten to your full page, do not include references. Okay? So next thing talks about how to set up the resume. Your resume should be divided into distinct sections. The italicized words above are typical section headings. Do not label the section headings. Headings should stand out as bold-faced, large text. Employers tend to have certain headings that interest them most, make it easy for them to find them. Here are some suggested headers. So you have major headers like objective, education, employment / work history, / work experience, and school activities. Minor headings would be computer experience, association certificates, community activities, highlights of qualification, honors, etc. Now, here's where we're going to talk about how it should be arranged. You have two types of formats. You have chronological and you have a functional. Chronological is just what it sounds. You start with your most recent job and work your way backwards to your least recent job. So if I was doing chronological, I would start off with Porterville High School, then work back to Campbell, then work to North Pym, and etc. The next one is functional. Functional works better if you are applying for something that's not in that particular field. Like if I was applying to it for a job that isn't a teaching career, I would like if I'm applying for something in the ag industry, believe it or not, people in the ag, like there's like ag business requires resumes and whatnot. Not being a farmer, but being people that help farmers out, and those people, they require resumes. If I was to do the functional format, I would probably start off with work my years out there at the Delta Center, and I'd cover the different positions I've had working during the summer out at the Delta Center, and I'd probably include information about working on my family farm, and then I would go into my teaching stuff near the end to show like, hey, I also have done this stuff, but since this is a job for agriculture, I'm going to focus first on agriculture and then on my other stuff. Should I place education above experience or vice versa? Most high school and college students include education section directly after the objective. However, if you experience relates directly to the job you're applying, you should place the experience section above education. So once again, I kind of mentioned that before. If you are applying for a job that requires a very specific education, you need to put the education front loaded, but if there is no like educational requirement for your job, you can drop the education a little bit lower on the resume. You still need to include it though. All right. How important is the format? The importance of the format lies in its consistency. There's no best resume format. Remember to stick to one format. It shows your organizational abilities. Now, I'll also say that if you are, actually we're going to talk about that here in a second. So should I use complete sentences when describing jobs? Not usually. Use action phrases instead. Leave out unnecessary words. Try to match the skills and experience with the employer's needs. On my resume, which you'll see, I include, it's a teaching resume, so it's an educational one. I include the school I taught at, and then I just list the classes that I taught and the activities I've sponsored. And so that's how I go about doing that. If I was to do for working on the farm, I would talk about, instead of saying I manage irrigation schedules, I do irrigation schedule management. I would do machine maintenance, blah, 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 that type of thing. All right. Last but not least, does the looks of your resume matter? Absolutely. When sending a resume to an employer or college, don't skim. Use off-white or white or off-white professional weighted paper and black ink. Avoid using colored paper or fancy graphics in your resume unless your job that you're applying for is in a career that might stress this type of formatting. Art, graphic design, advertising. So if you're going into an artistic medium, you might want to have a more artistic resume. If you're not going into an artistic resume medium, you need more of just a straight to the facts type of resume. And always print resumes using high quality ink. If you can find good paper, I'm not going to force you all to print y'all's, and most of the time you can upload the resumes nowadays digitally. But if you have to print it, like there, believe it or not, like this paper right here, it's not pourable paper, but it's crap paper compared to some paper out there. There are like high quality cardstock type of paper, certain weights that make it much more professional. All right, so that is that's the lesson over resumes. We'll have another one tomorrow. Real quick, let's talk about the assignment, if any of you are still with me. So around the 16-minute mark, I need to remember that. So here's the assignment I'm wanting you to do. You're going to fill out an application. So one of the things that people say is these like, those kids don't need to know how to make resumes. They need to know how to fill out applications, blah, blah, blah. Like, fine, I'll teach them both. So this is a resume worksheet, which is essentially an application. So what I want you to do is I want you to go through and fill it out as much as you can. I know that for you virtual students and quarantine students, it's going to be a little bit harder. So basically what I want you to do is like for full name, type out full name, and then colon, and then type your full name. Address, and then type your address. Same thing with birthday. Just fill out like the information that they ask. Fill it out as best you can via typing. I know it's more work for you, but that's just kind of where we're at. Man, I'm sorry. There is an option that talks about social security number. Do not give me your social security number, please. Do not do that. I have it marked out on the copy I'm handing to the face-to-face students, but if you are not a face-to-face student, on your digital students, don't include a social security number. You don't have to fill out every section. I don't expect you to have that much work experience, some of you. Just fill out as much as you possibly can and turn it in via Google Classroom for the virtual students. Face-to-face, you'll just turn this into me. All right? So if there's any other questions, email me, bdavidson@portugal.k12.ml.us. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.